Attention denizens of planet Earth.
Broadcasting from Carbondale in Southern Illinois' premier comic shop. And now your host, superlative shaman of comic book knowledge, Dan Brown. Flash the match signal in case of emergency for your host with the most on his mind, Matt Morton. Watch out, criminals. There's nothing funny to him about truth, justice, and the American way. It's Commander Harris himself, Scott Reed. And tuning in from the far reaches of no man's land, the mad scientist dream leader, Mike Ho. This is Campus Comics Cast.
Hey there, welcome to the latest episode of the Campus Comics Cast. We are still recording via the internet, as we still are not all in the same place. We're all sort of quarantining, really socially distancing.
Mm-hmm.
We are cities apart. And we're going to talk about a few different things tonight. Just so everybody knows, though, that even though we are all apart, the store is open again. We are open Tuesday through Saturday, 11 to 6. And that is at 816 East Main Street, Suite B in Carbondale. And you can find us on Facebook, Twitter, or if you want to call the store, the number is 618-457-6011. And this is Dan Brown. And I'm joined tonight by
Scott Reed
and
Mike Atchison.
Okay. So I think we're gonna have a good time on this episode. Unfortunately, though, we're gonna start off with kind of a bummer.
Big bummer.
Yeah, big one. So as most people probably know by now, the actor Chadwick Boseman, who portrayed Black Panther, passed away the other day from a battle with colon cancer. He was 43. And coincidentally, passed away on Jack Kirby's birthday.
Mm-hmm.
There wasn't a lot of. I think he kind of kept it quiet or kind of private with this condition.
Extremely quiet and extremely private. Yeah.
So it's kind of a shock to everybody when it happened, especially for somebody that young.
Mm-hmm.
But he had a pretty good career, and movies I'd seen he'd been in, I hadn't realized was him, I guess. And he did, a lot, and he made several movies while he was sick, it turns out, too. So,
including Black Panther.
Yeah, Black Panther was one of them. And, of course, we had a lot of Black Panther fans at the store. We got, we'll just have people come in just looking for Black Panther stuff now and then. So, it's going to hit a lot of people. I know we've got a younger customer, too, that's, probably going to take it pretty hard when she finds out. So, yeah. Anybody have any thoughts on that or anything else they want to say?
Well, you already kind of mentioned that his passing on Jack Kirby's birthday, which considering Jack Kirby probably was the primary driving force behind the creation of the Black Panther. That was kind of, I don't know, this coincidental timing, type of thing. I remember, and it has to have been over a year or so ago, that I remember seeing a photo of Chadwick Boseman, and he looked really, really thin, right? Yeah. And I had just made the assumption, and I think probably a lot of people did, that he was one of those actors like a Christian Bale, that really, really gets into his roles, and he has to drop a bunch of weight, he'll throw off a bunch of weight, or if he has to put on a bunch of weight, he'll put on a bunch of weight just to get into character. So, now obviously, well, I guess I shouldn't say obviously, but looking back on that, it would seem that there were other factors, going on there. So, but yeah, looking at the list of movies he made, now some of them like Message from the King and Civil War and Gods of Egypt, those were released in 2016. So those were probably all filmed prior to his diagnosis. But since 2017, movie releases: Marshall, Black Panther, Avengers Infinity War, Avengers Endgame, 21 Bridges, The Five Bloods, Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, which is completed filming and is supposed to be out, I guess, whenever. And then now I assume that this one's probably not going to happen. There's one that's called Yasuki, which was in pre-production. So I can't imagine that any filming there. But anyway, Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, we'll assume, will be his final film whenever it gets around to being released. I did see some quotes from Ryan Coogler that I thought were kind of cool. this is actually from Marvel.com, where he was basically talking about Chadwick Boseman, and I'm trying to find a good place to start this one. So basically, he's saying that there was this scene with between T'Challa and T'Chaka, and it was at that moment I knew I wanted to make this movie. After Scarlett's character leaves them, Chad and John was the actor playing T'Chaka, conversing in a language I'd never heard before. It sounded familiar, full of the same clicks and smacks that young black children would make in the States, the same clicks that would often be chided for being disrespectful or improper, but it had a musicality to it that felt ancient, powerful, and African. In my meeting after watching the film, I asked Nate Moore, one of the producers of the film, about the language. Did you guys make it up? Nate replied, that's Xosa, so Xhosa. I don't know, but it's John Caney who played T'Chaka's native language. He and Chad decided to do the scene like that on set, and we rolled with it. I thought to myself, he just learned lines in another language that day. I couldn't conceive how difficult that must have been. And even though I hadn't met Chad, I was already in awe of his capacity as an actor. So, and then the other thing that really jumped out at me from this one, because this was such a really powerful scene at the end of Black Panther. It said, in early drafts of the script, Eric Killmonger's character would ask T'Challa to be buried in Wakanda. Chad challenged that and asked, what if Killmonger asked to be buried somewhere else? And I guess that's where they get that, him being, buried in the sea scene. So that was basically part of Chadwick Boseman's influence on that film. So, but Ryan Coogler just wanted to praise him. He's like, as a lead actor, showing up for the readings by the other actors that they were auditioning. He was just basically just said he was just a consummate professional. So, and all that was happening while he was in the early stages of, colon cancer. So, but everything that you read online just has nothing but praise for him. So.
Yeah, and like I don't know if physically he went through the transformations like Christian Bale did, but like I saw Get On Up, the James Brown movie, in the theater, and I didn't realize that was the same actor for whatever reason. You know what I mean? And again, like James Brown, that's such a big character to play, but it's not like a Jack Nicholson or something where he's playing the same guy every time. You know what I mean? It really kind of developed these parts that he played. So
and you posted, Dan, on your Twitter feed. I'm actually trying to find it. And I probably should have found it before I even mentioned it. But his role in Black Panther has made him such a role model, for Black children, just to give them something to aspire to. And you had posted or retweeted just this young kid, I think he was like 7. And he had basically taken his Black Panther action figure and put it in a little box, and he had set up a little funeral service with all the Avengers around the box. So it's just anyway, the whole thing is just, it's just heartbreaking. So because
that's the word I was thinking. It's just we live in a world of instant entertainment, and you see faces and you hear voices and you're exposed to characters beyond your own inner circles just through the magic of TV and movies. And he's one of those people that one of those actors that you think, wow, I'd really like to meet this guy. I really would have, he just seems like such a great person. And that's what everybody says. He's they talked about him being a gentle soul and being a role model. And yeah, it's kind of a foundation shaking type deal where like I said earlier off air to Scott, it's in this day and age, it's amazing they kept this as quiet as they did, which I'm grateful for him and his family. God rest his soul.
From a selfish standpoint, I was so looking forward to Black Panther 2. It's just like, there are certain characters that in Marvel that they had cast that they had just absolutely 100% nailed the casting, and Chadwick Boseman as T'Challa was definitely one of the ones that they 100% got right. So it's like, Black Panther is my second favorite Marvel movie. So it's I'm just I'm you know I feel like now we've been deprived of what would have been another enormous film, that we're just not going to get the same film. It's not that we're not going to get a good film. We're just not going to get the same film that we would have got having Chadwick Boseman around for another round of that. So
yeah, he broke the mold for real.
Mhm.
I mean, my first exposure to him was on 42, the movie 42, and not that I was looking for that actor. I didn't know anything about him, but I just remember how good of a performance it was in that movie. And then he changed. I mean, he just absolutely completely shed whatever character he's playing as Jackie Robinson and became T'Challa. And he is one of those actors that, like you said, Dan, he's not like Jack Nicholson, and he's playing the same person every role. He was an excellent actor.
Yeah, and I think it speaks to him too, just his attitude, and he could have been super cynical and short with people, knowing he was dealing with that, and it doesn't sound like that was ever the case. I think anybody that knows me knows that that's how I'm going to act when I get cancer. So get ready for
it. Yeah.
One more thing, and then I'll be quiet on this topic. But he actually went to school at Howard with Ta-Nehisi Coates, who is currently the writer on the Black Panther.
Yeah, and I think he said some things too. I think he made some statements.
Yeah, that's probably something I should go look up, because I've enjoyed his run on Captain America and Black Panther. So I probably something I should go find and read. Yeah. So.
And Marvel put up I think it's probably like a 5-minute tribute video online too. It's probably on their website, and I know it's on YouTube and stuff if anybody wants to check that out. Kind of, got Ryan Coogler on there and some different people, castmates and stuff talking.
So. Yeah, it's on Marvel.com. You just go to the news link, and it's right there at the top of the page. So.
All right. Well, was there anything else anybody wanted to say?
I'm bummed out enough. We need to move on to something else.
Yeah.
Let's wallow, I think, if we don't. So moving on, I think we all kind of wanted something else to read, I think. And so we decided to take a look at the first trade of Saga. And, I know this is supposed to be a good book. It's just one I've never got around to picking up or checking out. Have you guys read this before, or what are your guys' experience with this book?
I had read it before, and I actually didn't really care too much for it. I know I'm in the minority on that one. Mike?
Well, okay, so I'll make up for the fact that I did not finish this entire volume by saying that I did read every issue and own every issue of Y: The Last Man, also written by Brian K. Vaughan. So I went into this, I didn't buy the individual issues of this. I bought the first trade, the physical copy, a while back from Mike No, and I read it a couple years ago, and I really just, for no good reason other than just my attention got diverted, and this was a good reason to pick it up again. However, I'm reading it digitally now, and I just haven't made it, haven't squeezed it into everything else. So what I see, I like so far.
All right.
Well, let me just summarize. This is the blurb, I guess, on the on the book. But from New York Times bestselling writer Brian K. Vaughan of Y: The Last Man, Ex Machina, and critically acclaimed artist Fiona Staples' Mystery Society North 40, Saga is the sweeping tale of a young family fighting to find their place in the worlds. When two soldiers from opposite sides of a never-ending galactic war fall in love, they risk everything to bring a fragile new life into a dangerous old universe. Fantasy and science fiction are wed like never before in a sexy, subversive drama for adults, and it definitely is for adults. This especially, So this arc collects the first arc of the smash hit series. So it covers issues 1 through 6. So. But yeah, with Brian K. Vaughan on Y: The Last Man, I definitely, would definitely take Y: The Last Man over Saga for sure. If I had to choose one or the other. So.
Well, the jury's still out for me because I've only read the first chapter of this volume. But if his whatever, he had a finite story in mind whenever he wrote Why the Last Man. And I don't know at what point in that series that I realized that, but it really made me appreciate the finite story in long form. He's a master at it. So I've all these years of collecting comics and either having one and dones or 2-issue arcs, 3-issue arcs, 6-issue arcs, knowing that there is a 60 or 70 or 80 issue run. I forget how many issues there were in that original run. And it's telling a complete story was really nice to look forward to. I was looking forward to the finale, and that's what I look forward to in this too, is that I'd like to see how this, and I know it's probably suffered from some delays in the last year or two, but that seems to be the way of the world anymore.
Well, he had deliberately taken some time off from Saga. So, I mean, there was at least a year where there's a deliberate, layout from the book for them to work on other projects. But he does have in mind.
I was trying to think, is it back up and running now, or is it still on hiatus?
That I couldn't tell you. I do have a previews catalog right beside me. Let me see if it's in anything about Saga in the current previews. So while you guys keep talking,
yeah.
Well, I could have swore, Dan, that I heard that he was back up and running, and maybe whatever
it is. I just don't follow it that closely because I don't read it.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, it's going to be bought in trades for me, if not in single issues. So, especially now that I've, as one of my co-hosts told me, I need to put on my big boy pants and get a subscription to Comixology.
Yeah.
And I've done that. So yeah, there's no excuses anymore.
Yeah, like again, I've heard nothing but good things about this book. I just, it's just one more book to pick up kind of thing, where I'm already reading a ton of stuff. I do remember when it came out there was, some people kind of stirred the pot a little bit with the cover of the first issue. I know there were some other professionals who took issue with it and that kind of thing, because, there's breastfeeding on the cover. And it's like, this isn't for kids. I think that's pretty apparent pretty quickly. And
that's kind of mild for some of the content that's in the book. So
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's well, I'm glad I didn't see any of those comments, because all that would have done is aggravate me, because I mean, it's what I've seen so far is good storytelling. The cover's not in bad taste. It's just a fact of life, sustenance.
It's hard to think of it as it's really this book about a book about this family unit, right? I mean, you got a father, a mother, and a child, so, and it's what they're going through. Now, obviously the situation and the environment that they're in is dramatically different, but that's what makes it a fantasy sci-fi book instead of just I
got to tell you one correlation. the one part of the first issue that I found some relevance in my own career was, if what had happened with these two happened in real life, well, she being I believe she worked as he was the prisoner and she was the guard, right? Oh yeah, she was supposed to be watching over these war prisoners, and they fell in love, and in my line of work, that happens once in a while between inmates and staff, and we have to investigate that at all costs. So yeah, we don't get to be as sympathetic to a love story as what you can in fantasy here.
Another thing I really kind of liked was the way the lettering of the narration kind of works within the art. Like, there's one shot in particular where it's a shot like of the planets and like the moon in outer space, and it kind of wraps around the edge of the planet. That I really like. It's the baby's narration, kind of going through.
Yeah, that's great. Was that Staples, or was that a separate letter?
I'm not sure. I could see that going either way. I mean, it's a pretty bold move for a letterer, not to put down the importance of a letter or anything. You just typically don't see that.
Right.
But
That's some of the most intriguing part of the whole.
Graphics is credited as lettering and design, so it might be them.
Okay. Well, I like the premise. I love the idea of some grand, on such a grand scale. A galaxy wide where pretty much every planet that's inhabited in this galaxy is affected by this war between the biggest planet in the galaxy and its moon. And they're tired of, I guess they're tired of tearing their own places up, and they just farm out their war to other planets. So it's pretty intriguing.
Yeah. And yeah, Fiona F. Staples' art is really great throughout this. A lot of working digitally here, you can tell.
So the computer monitor head people, do those characters remind you of any spacefaring super team character?
Not that I can remember off the top of my head, but go ahead and tell us.
Tom King, well, not Tom King, it was actually Marv Wolfman created the Omega Men, and one of their original characters was Doc, and he had the computer head on a humanoid body.
Okay. I guess
leave it to me to bring up that obscure reference. Just chalk that up to old guy. Yeah.
I do, for not reading the book, though, I do see the lion cat a lot, like in merchandise and things like that. So I'm glad, right away we get to what that is and what that's about.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of a neat thing to have in there.
Yeah, I thought that was cool too. It reminded me of, I don't know if you've ever heard of the author Piers Anthony, but he wrote a book called The Incarnations of Immortality, and there was a ring that was basically had been a snake in the past. Or anyway, it was a snake converted to a ring, and its name was Sning. And you could ask it anything, and for yes, it would squeeze once. For no, it would squeeze twice. And this kind of thing with that lying cat, that reminded me of Sning.
Mm-hmm.
Be handy to have around.
Right. Especially now.
Yeah.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah, we get a lot of characters introduced in these first 6 issues, and I really feel like you have a good feel for what each character is about at the end of these 6 issues. So it's like the characters are very, very well fleshed out. You kind of understand their motives and the type of individual that they are. So that is really, really solid writing. I don't know. Maybe part of it is that the content's just a little too mature for my typical reading taste. This is not something that I necessarily want to be just out reading in public and have somebody looking over my shoulder and see what it is that I'm reading. Be like, what is it that you're looking at?
Nobody in public should be that close to you right now, Scott.
Well, that's true too. That's true too. So.
Yeah, no, we really are just kind of thrown into the story here. Like, we don't even see like them breaking out or anything like that. It starts with, the narrator's point of view. It's, with the baby's birth.
The narrator is the baby.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's like her telling her, her story. So.
Yeah, and that's a great perspective, especially when you don't know where this is going.
Yeah. I feel like there's a lot of fun things you can do with that as far as revelations as to what's going on in the story and things like that as it goes on.
Definitely.
I did like the kind of ghost nanny that goes up there later on, kind of helps them out.
Mm-hmm. There are a lot of interesting plot devices and plot twists that for this story. So, and I think my primary complaint with it again is just some of the content. So if you have easily offended sensibilities, this is not for you.
Yeah.
But I think they got really good character design in here. You have these people from different planets and stuff like that, and they look different. It's not just so much one artist just putting their style over every little thing. And we get the revelation of the rocket ship that they get in the forest later on, and sort of neat kind of different takes on space travel and things like that.
Yeah, it's not hard to follow the characters at all, just because of, like, I'm
No.
I'm in the process of watching like the second season of Altered Carbon right now, and man, it is tough to keep track of what characters are what, you know.
Yeah, and
Uh,
it's a lot of other kind of story, not just sci-fi, even but just kind of different storylines where they introduce a lot of characters. Sometimes it is hard to keep up, or they don't manage it as well as they have here.
Yeah, and they have done a very, very good job. It's very, it's very clear who the important characters are, who the auxiliary characters are, the characters are going to be important down the road, or at least for the next few story arcs. Um, like the two freelancers.
Enjoy your second season of Altered Carbon, by the way.
Oh yeah.
That's all you're getting.
Oh, is
What's
it?
that on?
Netflix.
Yeah.
Well, after this, and not to get off too much on a tangent, but like I said, as confusing as the second season has been, I can understand why it's not getting a third. So.
Yeah. Well, is there anything else we had to say about Saga?
I'm trying to, I'm just kind of flipping through the pages right now and just see if there's anything else.
Got a paper. My digital copy's got a Paper Girls preview at the end.
I think it's like they have this one freelancer, the Will.
Yeah.
I think he's I assume he's gonna become a somewhat important character as this moves forward. And they had that whole scene where he goes to basically the sex planet.
Yeah.
And he's asking for something, I guess unusual or whatever. And that scene where they try to, basically a 6-year-old child, and he just kills the proprietor of the place and tries to rescue the child. So it's, I guess it's one of the things where even the bad guys aren't going to be all bad, and then maybe the good guys aren't going to be all good.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And you can kind of see his motivation now for wanting to take on this job, which he avoided earlier, and that kind of thing. So.
Yep, exactly. So yeah, it's definitely something for, if you're not, like I say, if you're not easily offended, then it's probably something that if you're especially want some non-superhero, then it would definitely be a pretty good read. Again, it's not quite to my taste, but I wouldn't tell somebody else not to read it if it was something that they thought they'd be interested in. So.
Yeah, I'd recommend it. I mean, I'm only basing it on the first chapter, but I'm going to keep reading it. I guarantee. Matter of fact, tonight I'm going to continue to read it.
We gonna grade it, or we gonna?
I think I'd give it a fine right now. Kind of want to, I want to see the story develop more. Like what's going on with everybody, and I enjoyed it, but again, didn't really blow me away. I think part of that too might be just the years of the critical acclaim for this book and not having read it. Might got built up a little bit too much in my head. Because that'll happen sometimes.
Yeah, I'm probably, I figured you would have been a higher rating than me, but I figured for me it's a fine, but I think for somebody else it would probably be at least a very fine, just because it is kind of a unique take on an environment. You have some unique characters and unique perspective for the story, so I can definitely see why this book appeals to so many people.
I'd go with a very fine, at least. I mean, this
for
is
one
to
issue.
me the yes, yes. Sue me. I need this break from superhero stuff, and I don't often break away from the superhero fare, but when I do, it's like, okay, I'm all in. So if I like it, and I like it so far, so.
So I think now we're gonna dive back into our continuing look at the '80s Vigilante series from DC. This time we're going to be looking at issues 8 through 11. And Mike, you want to let us know where we're at in the story of Adrian Chase?
Absolutely.
You read this, right?
No, I just got the Cliff Notes.
Right.
Went to Wikipedia and copied it down. No, I read it. I read it thoroughly. I reread it even. So I take my responsibilities, seriously, Dan. No, I Anyway, Vigilante number 8. This is a cover dated July 1984, and the cover is by Ross Andrew. Features our favorite anti-hero clinging to the side of a building with a one-man helicopter firing a missile at him from nearly point-blank range. And I'm telling you, if that missile blew up right there, it's gonna take out the helicopter too.
No.
The cover has this big announcement at the bottom. Says the return of the electrocutioner, and the story is by Marv Wolfman, art by Ross Andrew and Mike DiCarlo. In the opening scene, we have
Well, you missed the important billboard on the cover that says "The Teen Titans" and then has a little TM on it as well. So
yeah, that was, I guess, okay. Yeah, I seen it, but I didn't think of it.
Yeah.
It didn't make the noteworthy the column for me. In the opening scene, we have an extortioner named Jose Ruiz being chased over the rooftops of New York by the electrocutioner. After Ruiz trips and falls down a fire escape, breaking his leg, he's caught and brutally killed by the electrocutioner. Now, note that this is just in my own notes. This Ruiz's hair was green in the digital copy that I read. I don't know if it is in the original, but I'm pretty sure that's not meant to be. Might be a coloring mistake.
It's brown in the print.
It's brown. This is an issue that a lot of people are taking right now with sort of reprints on new glossy paper.
Yeah.
Color mixes that were designed for newspaper, which would absorb a lot more ink. And I think you're going to do that same thing on digital. So it is brown in the original printed comic book, but it definitely leans towards sort of a green kind of tone. And so I'm going to bet that's what, that's picking up on. And you'll probably see that in, like, if this is reprinted, in the future.
Gotcha. Okay. So the splash page of the story announces that this is the beginning of a new phase in the life of Vigilante. In the next scene, we have another pursuit. This time it's with Vigilante being chased by what I'm going to call the little chopper guy, because I don't know how else to say it. I don't know what his name is yet. Anyway, we know from Vigilante's inner monologue that he has just retrieved a very valuable microchip, presumably from the little chopper guy, who in turn is trying to get it back. And in a nice little bit of action, one of the missiles launched by the chopper blows Vigilante off of a ladder on the side of the building, but Vigilante is able to use a couple of handheld steel grappling hooks, almost like brass knuckle type deals, where he's able to latch onto the side of the building. However, the chopper guy has him pinned down and is threatening to telling him he's better return that microchip or else. Well, Vigilante says or else, and he jumps off the building, grabs onto the bottom of this chopper, and pretty much is able to drop down into a building and to gain some space between the two of them. The little chopper guy's pretty persistent, though, even if his aim is horrible. It reminded me of a couple issues ago when Dan was mentioning how these so-called marksmen were, missing everything they were shooting at, and that's the way it was with this guy in the chopper. He follows Vigilante for a couple of more pages through the streets and even into the subway, which seems pretty unlikely, even for the smallest choppers. Vigilante and this chopper face off finally on the tracks, and Vigilante pulls out what must have been a very large caliber handgun because he was able to blast off the rotor of the chopper. Anyway, the police arrive. Vigilante turns over the chopper guy and the microchip to the police. And the police at this point, they're like, we've always heard this Vigilante was not on our side. He's the bad guy, but now we're not sure. The next scene, we find Adrian Chase at the gym with his judge friend, Alan Wells, where we are once again reminded by their attire that this was written in the 80s. They return to their conversation about Adrian potentially taking the place of soon retiring Judge Wilson Turner. Adrian still hasn't made up his mind. Judge Wells laments the fact that some criminals are being let go because prisons are overcrowded, and that's why he thinks Chase is needed on the bench. Any comments so far, gentlemen?
Who wears short shorts?
I want to go back to the opening sequence just real quick, because we aren't shown the electrocutioner right away. He's sort of in shadow for the second page there. And so,
Right.
as a reader, you're thinking, oh, this will be Adrian. This is Vigilante chasing someone down, and that's when we get the reveal of the electrocutioner in here. And then the opening part with Vigilante facing down a little chopper guy kind of reminded me of like a James Bond movie, is where we're sort of already in the middle of the action with him at the beginning. There is a thing, and it's sort of the 80s thing of, oh, this microchip is very valuable. Definitely 80s computer boom sort of thing. Why isn't there another microchip? Why can't we make another one? Kind of deal.
Yeah, anybody that bought four megabytes of RAM back in the early 90s, you realize just how valuable this technology was.
But again, tying into a Bond plot of View to a Kill, where microchips played into the plot in a big way in that one. Pretty unrealistic. The sort of mini one-man chopper flying into a subway, going down, the tunnel. But again, no worse than what Mission Impossible did, 15 years later or whatever it was.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's all.
There was a lot of action right off the bat in this issue. One of the things I took away from this conversation he's been having with the Judge Wells, is that it was sort of a reminder of the mentality of society in America at the time, was that you got to build more prisons to defeat crime. And having worked in that system, that didn't really work out that well. It just broke the bank. Scott, did you have anything?
Nothing else, no.
All right, so the next day, while Chase is in the police station, he witnesses little chopper guy's lawyer picking him up. We also learned that the chopper guy's name is Henry Ebert. Chase is trying to figure out who put up Ebert's bail so he can get a lead on who he's working for and why they wanted the microchip so badly. He suspects that there's something big going on. Next in the courtroom, Chase witnesses Judge Wells. Again, I didn't know this was Wells at first. I thought it was someone else because in my issue or my digital copy, the hair is like salt and pepper instead of a brownish color. Anyway, Judge Wells was ruefully releasing someone named Mr. Cardazzi because the evidence found on him was inadmissible. And we all know that makes this guy a prime target for Vigilante. And I also guess that seems like Adrian Chase just spends his downtime hanging out in the courtrooms trying to see who's getting off the hook so he can, figure out who to go after.
Is that Wells or is that Turner, the one who's retiring? That's the judge.
Well, I thought maybe it was Turner, but later on in this issue, you learn by the dialogue that it was.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah.
So I would have assumed it was Turner. They don't actually say any place on these pages that. Okay. Just checking.
Yeah, again, that's why I thought it was somebody completely different, but you'll see here in a second where it turns out to be Wells. So later that night, at this guy that got off the hook, Cardazzi, at his estate, the electrocutioner makes an appearance and meets out the justice that Cardazzi avoided in the courtroom. Of course, he does it in his own fashion by electrocuting him. Later that night, Chase and Wells have dinner together, continuing to discuss the Cardazzi case, and when they arrive back at Wells's home, they find a message scrawled in large letters on his wall from the electrocutioner saying, "You may have freed Cardazzi, but I haven't." And that's where I'm talking about. It seems that it's indicating that it was actually Wells that released Cardazzi, even though Wells didn't want to do it. So while they wait on the police, they discuss the fact that the electrocutioner had once fought Batman, and that's back in Batman 331 for anyone that's interested in digging it up. They also debate whether these types of vigilantes have a role to play in society, and Chase starts to think that Wells suspects him of being the vigilante. But the conversation sort of backs off a little bit, and Chase is a little bit relieved. But back at the RV, which this is the first time after reading all these issues, this RV's design matches Vigilante's costume. Did you guys mention that before, or did I miss it? Or
I think we might have brought up the V painted on the side or something, but that's about it.
Well, it's like the Winnebago, except with just one little dip. So now in my mind, I call it the Vigabago. But it's like, okay, so it's Vigilante's Vigilante's costume design, and I'm like, that doesn't really that's not doing him any favors if he's wanting to be.
Well, it's branding.
True. Anyway, back at the RV, Terry relates to Chase that JJ has learned that the microchip allows for long-distance remote control, which would be perfect for weaponry, and that there's probably a connection between Henry Ebert, the chopper guy, and the meeting of all those mob chiefs in the mansion from the previous issue or issues. As Vigilante decides to pay a visit to Ebert, we find Ebert on the phone with the controller, telling him all's good, the microchip is as good as his. However, before Vigilante can confront Ebert, the electrocutioner shows up and kills Ebert with his patented hand-in-the-face electrocution. Vigilante literally bursts into the scene with his motorcycle and goes toe-to-toe with the electrocutioner, and while fighting, they banter about whose methods are the best or the most appropriate. The electrocutioner gets the better of Vigilante, but spares him by only giving him a minor shock. However, the house is on fire, and that leaves us with a cliffhanger of Vigilante's leg being pinned under some burning beams. So what other nuggets have you picked out of this, Dan and Scott?
I don't have anything else in the issue.
Yeah, I don't have a lot. Just at the very end of the last page, it says, next issue, the most shocking ending of all. And pretty bold statement. So after that, though, in the back of the book, we there's not really a letters column. We just have a big full-page sort of ad for the cover of the next issue. But then there's a pinup by Romeo Tank Hall of Vigilante, which I don't know if that's in the digital versions or not. But it's just a bonus kind of thing in there.
It is, and it was really good. I'm used to him being just an inker, but wow, that was a good pinup.
Sort of a neat kind of old school kind of bonus in there.
Yeah. Well, this story picks up again with Vigilante number 9. If you guys are ready to move on to it.
Yep.
So.
All right, this is cover dated August of 1984, and the title of the story is The Electrocutioner Strikes, covered by Ross Andrew and Mike DiCarlo, and it's written by Wolfman with pencils by Andrew and inks by Atkins and Magyar. We pick up at last issue's cliffhanger with Vigilante and the criminal Henry Ebert trapped in the burning wreckage of Ebert's house. Vigilante wiggles his way out of the burning rubble and gets to the motorcycle with Ebert over his shoulder. However, his bike's tire was melted to the floor and would not move, which seems unlikely. If it was that hot, they probably would have been burnt to a crisp. But anyway, back to comics. He was able to rev up his engine and break free. And one of his trademark moves, he shoots out the plate glass window and ramps his bike right out of the house. Unfortunately, Ebert, as he lays him down in the lawn, he's already dead. But Vigilante does get a clue off of his body, an address. So, making his way back to the RV, Vigilante gives the address to JJ to run some cross checks on it. Chase gets another call from the very persistent Judge Wells, who once again presses him to take the judge seat. They meet over some late morning, and I read this 3 times thinking, are you kidding? He first invited Vigilante or Chase to lunch. Chase says, no, I got a lunch date. Let's go to the club and just meet there for drinks. And I thought, well, maybe they're just going to have, a cup of coffee or whatever. But by the look of the glasses drawn, these guys are having cocktails at 10:30 in the morning.
Yeah, it was the 80s, Mike. Come on.
All right. Hey, I just pointed it out. But anyway, it comes down to it. Chase still hasn't made up his mind about wanting to be the judge. And he then moves on to his date with Marcia King, the DA. And she also encourages him to take the judgeship. Plus, the conversation went into that corny sexual innuendo that I mentioned earlier. That is like listening to your, parents talk dirty. It was like, oh Lord, this is bad stuff.
Did you hear your parents talk dirty on a regular basis, Mike?
No, man, I'm making making a comparison as to how awkward it sounds. All right, I opened up the door for that one.
Yeah, not only that, you gave me a second chance to say it. So.
Oh, that's true. You've been thinking about that. Anything so far?
I just wanted to jump back to the first page real quick. I want to, not to be that guy, but
he's going to be that guy.
the title of this issue is "In the Grip of the Electrocutioner." The Electrocutioner Strikes, as Mike pointed out, was the copy from the cover. But the actual title of the story is "In the Grip of the Electrocutioner." And as far as the rubber burning in the fire, I appreciated that just because it's a little more thought given into what would happen maybe than you would typically get in a comic book even back then. It was something that's supposed to be, kind of fast paced. So like I'll let that slide. If we're gonna also bring up the fact that there was no ramp for him to go through that window on, we were all cool with that.
You're right. You have to suspend the disbelief. It's just fun sometimes to point out. Oh yeah, how does that work? All right, so the next day, Vigilante tracks down a thug named Moose for clues, and he finds him at a Greasy Spoon restaurant that serves the gangster types, and he takes him out with a nice flying kick. Moose, after being knocked down, he says he doesn't know who hired Ebert, but points Vigilante to another guy named Al, which by the end of the story, we have yet to figure out who Al is. So I'm assuming and that's Al with an O, O-W-L. Assuming we'll figure that out in the next issue or two. And then somewhat jarringly, Vigilante switches cases to look for the electrocutioner again. He stakes out this apartment of Remington Cord, if you remember, was acquitted of charges against him a few issues ago, and he actually didn't commit that crime. He got away with some things years before, but he didn't commit the most recent one. Anyway, as Vigilante figures that the electrocutioner would be targeting Cord, he's not disappointed in that. However, when the electrocutioner shows up, Vigilante intervenes too late to save Cord, but has a 3-page battle with the electrocutioner, resulting basically in a stalemate between the two. Anything yet?
A couple of things and just go into ads real quick, is you had the ad for the Warlord toy, along with like Arak and some of the others. Weren't these like He-Man style figures, Dan?
Yeah.
Do you remember?
Yeah, they were.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't have any of these, but yeah, they were definitely kind of riding the wave of He-Man in the 5.5-inch scale with the kind of squat pose.
I think the only one I ever remember seeing was the Warlord toy. I don't think I saw any of the other ones ever. So.
Yeah, and now if you look up that Warlord toy on eBay, if you find it like in the box or in good shape, you're going to be paying a good price for it.
Really?
Yeah, probably just the rarity of them, especially being in good shape, almost 40 years later.
Yeah. And then actually the other thing I'd have to comment on is also another ad, which is the ad on the, it doesn't have a page for the ad, but Jim, Son of Saturn.
Oh, yeah.
Which is the Gene Colan.
Yeah,
story, which I think was originally supposed to be a Martian Manhunter story, and they had to change it up. So, so I remember I think that was my first real exposure to Gene Colan, at least the earliest thing that I remember seeing of his. So, and I've been buying that off the shelf.
Night Force was my first real exposure to him. The also written by Mark Wolfman.
That's the only thing I had so far. So,
Dan, anything?
Yeah, I think that's probably it for me. I think in this section.
All right. Well, it takes us to the last third of the book. Back at the RV, JJ figures out that the controller's main computer terminal is hidden in an abandoned warehouse. The controller's not unaware, though, that they've been hacked into, and he sets up some clues to lure his opponents to him. So. After JJ runs all of this down to Chase, he convinces Chase that he's going to go run some recon on the warehouse, but promises not to even get out of the car. Chase reluctantly agrees, and of course JJ, being anxious for some real action instead of being cooped up in the RV, he breaks his promise and snoops around inside the warehouse. And in a dramatic turn of events, he's caught by the controller's goons and is shot as he tried to escape out of the warehouse by jumping into the Hudson River. And in the last scene, JJ and Terry get the news about JJ's body being found in the Hudson River in one of the worst possible ways, finding out on the morning news. So that wraps up these two issues.
I don't have anything else to
I thought
add.
these two were jam packed with. It seemed like they were just had a lot of information in my mind.
Yeah, it's definitely moving along here.
Yeah.
Yeah. The issue that I'm having with these so far is you basically had the vigilante fighting other, like, I feel like all the villains are basically the same. They're just like these one trick guys,
Right.
that are, so it's that part of it's just a little, I don't know, it feels a little stale to me. And that just seems to like keeps continuing there. So with those issues.
And I think that's a trap you fall into with other characters like the Punisher. Doesn't necessarily have like the best rogues gallery. There's like some highlights, but a lot of it's just like anonymous criminals and gangsters and that kind of thing that are disposable. So yeah, I mean, and again, the exceptions to that we've seen are the Controller, and then Cannon and Saber, was it? But it's like, again, like no one is cosplaying as Cannon anymore.
No.
You know what I mean? So yeah.
Well, you could be the first.
Yeah, I could be. So we good with 9?
I think so.
Okay, so that's going to take us to issue 10. What is this? Oh man, this dot pattern's messing with my eyes, but this is September 1984. And again, this is by Marv Wolfman and Ross Andrew with correct Magar. I think there's supposed to be a Y in his last name. Is the inker here?
Oh yeah, I just noticed that.
This story is called Vendetta, and it opens with JJ's funeral, and you meet Adrian is introduced to JJ's Aunt Fanny, which really feels like when they finally introduced Ben Grimm's Aunt Petunia in the FF comics. I feel like we never really thought that was an actual character. Really showed up. But yeah, she knew that apparently that like Adrian and JJ were friends and wants to speak to him for a second. But then we see Terry and Adrian back in the RV where Chase is doing the typical hero thing of putting the blame on himself for JJ's death, and tells Terry that he intends on killing whoever is responsible, and Terry kind of storms out at the end. Then we get a scene of a meeting again with the mobsters and the Controller. Controller is saying, kind of letting everybody know you're in right now with me or not, and we see a couple of the mobsters leave. An older one who says his health isn't good enough, and then another, this Johnny Z character who leaves with him. When then the Controller, again, we realize now what Controller wanted the microchip for. It was for this device he's working on, and he sort of bugs or tunes in somehow to Marsha's office where her and Adrian are talking, and where Marsha says to Adrian, I didn't know you knew Jonathan Davis. And I don't think they're talking about the lead singer of Korn here. I'm pretty sure that's just a reference to JJ, but we never really hear like his full name like that typically. Does anyone have anything to say about these first few pages here?
Jonathan James Davis.
Yeah.
I have a nephew that's JJ, but it's for John Jr. So one of the things I was going to bring up is it made the scene at the cemetery right after they buried JJ, and Aunt Fanny introduced herself to Adrian and Terry. It made me feel like I should know who this is, almost like I don't know, like she had been introduced before, but I don't remember it.
I don't know.
Yeah, it's I mean, there was. And Adrian was being, I mean, even though, yeah, I get it, he's sad that JJ was killed, but he gave her the, if looks could kill, she'd be lying on the floor look.
Oh, yeah.
And I mean, I don't know what she did to make him act that way, but it just seemed kind of weird. That's all I had.
Yeah, I took that as because he felt like he was responsible. So he really didn't have anything to say, feeling like he was responsible.
Well, like Terry said, grow the hell up.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Okay, so after that, we've got this sort of car chase with a vigilante on his motorcycle going after some of these mobsters. And I think it's around this scene here. We start seeing again this kind of really nice zipatone pattern on Vigilante's goggles here, which is a pretty good effect, especially for early 80s. This is before digital coloring or anything. This is just sort of an old school technique, but it's a really nice transition on this one panel on page 8 here, which looks really nice. And again, we get some tricks with the motorcycle here, and him chasing down these gangsters who have some sort of, it's some kind of machine gun. I'm not sure. It doesn't look like it's big enough to be an Uzi, but it's definitely, I don't know, this might just be the artist didn't have a good reference kind of thing or something. But Vigilante ends up shooting the wheels out of the gangster's car with missiles and explosions that definitely would have messed these guys up more than happened here. And we get sort of an A-team ending to the scene here, where we see Vigilante pulling away as the car explodes behind him, and we get the caption of "They ran off while I planned my next move." So letting everybody know he didn't kill these guys. He probably blew up the car they were in a second ago, but they got away clean. After that, we have Vigilante kind of storming this compound, but he goes in on a sort of mini sub that JJ has made for him previously, and so he's just sort of riding this thing in a wetsuit, gets on land, and then switches into his Vigilante suit once he's sort of made his way into the compound. There he confronts the old gangster that walked away from the controller's plan, and is sort of roughing him up and questioning him when the guy, it looks like he has a heart attack, but then you realize something has happened to his pacemaker, and his pacemaker is smoking now, and he's dead. And
Johnny Z is dead.
And so then Vigilante has to escape the compound, where they've now released dogs to come after him, and he escapes back on the mini sub. Anybody have anything to say about this section here? It's kind of straightforward.
I guess they got the mini sub from the same guy who did the mini helicopter.
Right, little chopper guy.
little chopper guy. I will say that, in the old days, I wouldn't have bothered me one bit knowing that a dog got his spine snapped. And I'm like, man, that kind of bothers me, even though these are Dobermans and they're coming after him. But wow, you just wouldn't. I don't think you'd see that too much in today's comics.
No. I just want to point out real quick too. There's an ad in this section too, where it just looks like sort of a letter on a DC masthead from Dick Giordano, kind of talking about the recent sampler #1 that came out. And I want to point this out because there is mention at the bottom here where they're talking about why they did the DC sampler, and to kind of put different ideas out there. And they also mentioned that they sometimes have the feeling that no fans are picking up on change in writer or artist or in creative direction, like Saga of the Swamp Thing or Vigilante. So I don't know if they're just referring to like the artist changes in Vigilante, because we had Keith Pollard for the first few issues, and now it looks like we're getting Ross Andrew on a regular basis.
Yeah, it's weird.
I don't know if it doesn't affect sales.
Yeah, it's weird that they put. I mean, I get it with Saga of the Swamp Thing. I mean, you went from Len Wein to Alan Moore.
Alan Moore, yeah.
And with this, I mean, it's been Marv Wolfman, and from Keith Pollard to Chuck Dixon to Ross Andrew, and he's not going to be here for very much longer.
Yeah.
Hey, and that DC Sampler 2 has the first appearance of Amethyst.
Oh, yeah.
I've got a couple of them. I don't know which ones.
So then we're back at police headquarters, again with Captain Hall, and saying that there are 12 banks being robbed all at the same time on a Monday morning. Then we cut to the controller, and like this is his plan. This is what he was been kind of masterminding with the different mob heads. And then we see another group of gangsters in a van, and while everything else is going on, they are going to go rob a bank while the police come with all the other robberies. Then we have, again, we cut back to Terry and Adrian. Adrian's getting ready to go out, and Terry's, again, trying to convince him to not kill anyone. again, he, feels responsible for what happened to JJ. He wants, justice in a way that, I kind of thought we would see more regularly in this book, but we haven't, with his only killing in self-defense. Then we go back to the bank robbery, and apparently because of what the controller has done, the doors and the vault open up automatically according to his commands. And we find out that the mobster who passed away was because he had his pacemaker hooked up to over the telephone, so his doctor could check it via computer. And again, it's the 80s, so computers can do anything. So the controller has manipulated that to kill the gangster. And so Johnny Z is paying his respects and gets introduced to a couple of FBI agents who are going to arrest him. He gets in the car, but we find out that Vigilante has already taken control of the car and takes away with Johnny Z while these bank robberies are going on. And Vigilante kind of wants to know from Johnny Z what's going on with everything, even though he's not involved with the controller's plan now. He knew, he kind of knows what was going on. Adrian plays chicken with a train to kind of convince him to tell him what he wants to know, and they are able to elude the FBI agents that way. Vigilante takes him to a spot where he stashed his motorcycle and kind of abandons him there so the feds can catch up to him. And then we see another bank that's getting robbed by a different group, and Vigilante's just kind of staking it out there with a rifle, waiting for the killers to show up, and that's where this issue ends. Again, no letter column, just sort of a preview for the cover of the next issue. You guys, got anything you wanted to bring up about this?
I don't have anything in this one.
Okay.
No,
again, pretty straightforward, and another one to be continued to the next issue. So that will take us to issue 11 of Vigilante. If I open that up. So again, this one is cover dated October 1984, and that's a little easier to read through the lasers than it was the Zipatone on the last issue. And this one is by Marv Wolfman, Ross Andrew, and Dick Giordano inking. And this issue is entitled Vengeance is Mine. And so now we're kind of back in the car with Vigilante and the gangster, where he kind of explains what was going on with the meeting with the controller and the plan and everything. And so we're back now to Vigilante kind of staking out the bank, and he's following these gangsters that are leaving the bank, knowing that they'll lead him to the controller. Then we kind of go back to the controller's headquarters here, where the different gangsters are showing up now with the loot that they've gotten from all these bank robberies. It turned out everybody agreed to pay him 33%. He's saying now he wants half. And of course, the gangsters aren't happy with that. They're, saying they're gonna leave and abandon him. We cut back to police headquarters with Captain Hall, kind of trying to figure out what's been going on with everything. And now we see the gangster with the eye patch that left controller is now sort of passed out in the vault with the money, and can't tell if that's a gun back there or what that is. That's not a great shot there. But now we go back.
It's supposed to be a submachine gun.
Submachine gun, okay. So then it cuts back to the gangsters and sort of leaving the controller's headquarters, and we've got Donna Domcidio. I can't remember how to pronounce that. But again,
the godmother.
Yeah, the sort of godmother, the sort of gangster Aunt May of the book. And yeah, they're going to go along with the controller's plan right now. But again, it's just a computer, and she can find someone else to use that. And then, the plan is to turn on the controller after that point, once they have all that under control. And then we have Vigilante kind of in the trees outside, spying on them, sort of waiting for everybody to leave. And that's when he attacks the controller's house. One guy he swings down from a tree limb and knocks out. Another guy he leaves a $50 bill out for. So that guy will come out and grab the 50, and then Vigilante gets the drop on him. So
I thought maybe there might be like a fish hook and a string on that thing.
There might as well be.
Can't get it away.
I mean, I feel like it kind of has to be, or else they'd blow away probably. So step away from Bugs Bunny here. Hardcore anti-hero book. But again, Vigilante uses this grappling gun that JJ made for him to kind of get inside. And as soon as he's in, these sort of steel doors sort of cover up the windows, and the controller's aware that he's in the house. So he sends a bunch of goons after him to shoot. There's a pretty massive firefight in the hallway here, which it's hard to believe that he doesn't get shot about 5 times right here at the beginning. But then he's able to fight these guys, but they kind of dogpile on him. And as he fights his way out, his costume starts to get torn up, and the bottom half of his face is exposed, which I don't think we've seen before so far in the book. But he jumps off a railing and grabs a hold of a chandelier and kind of crashes down to the floor as he keeps fighting these guys. And then the exterminator robots start showing up, which again, at this point, Adrian doesn't know is a robot and thinks that this is a guy that is dead from the previous issue. But then he ends up kicking the head off of the robot and realizes it's a robot. And that's how, the executioner is still around. But again, as he's going through the house, more of these executioner robots show up, and he has to fight them all. And he ends up, what does he do? He ends up like throwing a grenade and killing several of the robots. Yeah. And then goes down this sort of trick hallway that's got moving walls coming at him and a trapdoor with spikes. Really kind of old school traps. Then we have these giant buzzsaw blades coming through the walls. He ends up throwing, he throws another grenade, blows a hole in the ceiling, and uses the grappling gun to get up there. For a second, I almost thought he was just going to try jumping off of the buzzsaw blades up to it, but he ended up just rappelling up and getting out of there. But now he faces the controller here at his lab here at the end, and controller starts shooting lasers at him because it's the 80s.
Well, he just puts him in a laser cage.
Yeah. Well, trying to think. Yeah, no, because it does hit his leg, but I don't know. I can't tell if that actually hurts him or not. It's hard to tell.
I think it's closing in around him.
Yeah. So again, the controller is talking to him and mentions that JJ was snooping around his warehouse, so he must have been a friend of the Vigilantes, and this guy was also a friend to DA Adrian Chase, he says, and he says, that's interesting, isn't it? And then he eventually just basically calls out that he knows Vigilante is Adrian Chase. At this point, Vigilante pulls out a throwing star and hits the controller's control box of his robot suit, and sort of damages a suit there where it's starting to malfunction. And controller yells for Vigilante to kill him because without the suit he will die. He's in incredible pain. And Vigilante just leaves him there and calls the cops, saying, maybe they'll get to you in time. Well, controller's screaming, "Kill me" on the way out. The next to last scene, I guess, is Adrian now sort of beaten up and bruised at JJ's grave, knowing that he didn't kill the controller like he was planning on. But then Marcia shows up saying that Adrian says earlier that the controller was in a coma. Marcia says he has died now. He never regained consciousness. So Vigilante's secret identity is safe. He didn't get a chance to tell anybody that Adrian Chase was Vigilante before he died. Pretty typical comic book, getting around the bad guy, knowing the hero's secret identity, and not making the hero look that bad. Then at the end here, we've got Adrian, Marcia, and Alan here, again talking about his offer to Chase of becoming a judge, and at the end, Adrian agrees. Judge Adrian Chase sounds good to me. So he's going to take him up on that and become a judge now. Did anybody have any thoughts there on this?
Well, I don't know where the echo's coming from, but must be me. I won't talk then.
Okay. Well, you'll get our feedback coming through on yours.
Yeah. I don't know.
I didn't have anything to add to that last issue.
Okay. We were talking earlier about, not great villains in the book so far. I'm kind of disappointed they killed the controller. I know you got to get justice for JJ in here. But again, just stopping his plan, I feel like would have been one thing. And then if you have this idea looming over you that, hey, this villain might be coming back and he knows who you are, I think that could have led to some really good stories. I kind of wish they wouldn't have killed him off here like they did. I guess there's always the chance that he survived or he's in the computer or something maybe in the future. I don't know if it'll go there or not, but I just feel like that was kind of throwing the baby out with the bathwater here with sort of a good idea that could play into future storylines.
We'll talk about an Achilles heel.
Yeah.
If you could take him out with a throwing star right in the little control panel at the front.
Yeah. Again, you think you would have some redundant backup systems in that?
Yeah.
But hey, we can do. The only thing what's that?
I think Judge Alan Wells is the electrocutioner.
Okay.
You didn't have to say it twice.
I didn't try.
The only other thing I wanted to bring up was in the letters column here, we've got some people kind of complaining about some of the stuff in the book. And one of the things that this one reader brings up is, why the garish costumes on the assassins? Is it a requirement of Earth One Bad Guys Union? One would think that a good torpedo would want to be able to fade into scenery PDQ after a hit. So again, probably talking about Cannon and Saber from earlier, everybody's favorite assassins for hire. But again, if we don't get that, we've got the generic criminal in plain clothes. It's kind of becoming a staple of the book.
I just saw that Michael Urie has a letter here.
Oh, really?
Yeah. He's the second letter. Yeah.
Cool. Now we got T.M. Maple in here too. He wrote a lot of letters.
Yeah. Well, Michael Urie's wrote. He wrote for comics. He was actually a guest at Superman Celebration a couple years ago.
Good time. So
I was gonna say T.M. Maple. He was probably the most prolific letter writer in comics ever. The Mad Maple's what the TM stood for. He died a few years ago.
Well, do we want to rate these issues?
I go with basically the same I've been going all along. I think I've been in that, kind of like that fine range. It's something that it's at this point for sure. I wouldn't still have been buying this monthly off the shelf.
Right.
I wouldn't have been having, being a Punisher fan, I wouldn't have enjoyed this character anywhere near as much as I enjoyed reading the Punisher at the time. So I actually, prefer the non super costumed villain for this type of a character. Because sometimes they can just feel a little silly. And I just feel like some of these villains are just a little bit too silly, and it's more the same on each of these issues. So fine, maybe even fine minus.
Yeah, I'll probably go fine on these issues here. There's some ups and downs throughout. Again, really just kind of disappointed in the way they just sort of dispatched the controller after such a build up to that character. And again, it's not a guy that you're going to get a physical fight with your main hero with. I get that, but I feel like there's a lot left on the table with that character to just get rid of him like that. Mike, do you want to grade these?
Yeah, I'll probably be the same as you. Fine, right down the middle.
Yeah.
I didn't really enjoy the art the last couple issues. I don't know what it is, but they've had a couple different inkers, and I I forgot who he had a couple issues ago, and it was okay. Ross Andrew was. Ross Andrew's got a style. You can kind of tell by his figures and his motion that it's him, but with the wrong inker, he's not my favorite artist.
Yeah. Yeah, inker can definitely make or break the art for sure.
At least you have Gil Kane to look forward to.
Yeah. Well, was there anything else we wanted to talk about this time around?
I think that's it.
About it, isn't it? Let's see. Next time, I believe we'll be doing our monthly look at the previews catalog. So if you want to play along at home, you can get your copy of that and kind of check that out. Just let everybody know the store is open at 816 East Main Street, Suite B in Carbondale. You can also find us on Facebook or Twitter, or you can always call the store at 618-457-6011. And this is Dan Brown, and you can find me online on Twitter and Instagram and TeePublic at Detective651. Scott, where can everybody find you?
Scott Reed, just find me at burgcomics.com, BURG comics.com, and there's links to eBay, Facebook, Instagram.
All right.
Mike Atchison 5 on Twitter.
Okay. And that's it for this time. We'll see you next time. Thanks.
It's like your parents talking dirty.